Jixun Foo. Everybody knows Jixun already, right? From GGV Capital. GGV Capital, one of the leading U.S., China, global venture capital firms, and Jixun has been with the firm for 13 years. And he has a huge portfolio of companies, 13 of them. He's on the Forbes Finest list. You can check him out. It's number 60, which is great. Now, previously, he was with, I've actually known Jixun for a long time, when he was at DFJ ePlanet and doing the Baidu investment. So this is your fellow who called the shots on the Baidu investment. He's also called the shots on the Xpeng Motors investment. So I think he's one to watch. Let's give them a round of applause for being here. What I've done is I've asked them to speak with one another because I think it's interesting when an investor and their portfolio company get together and they kind of talk about things like how did they get together? What are the challenges? What are the opportunities? What are the surprises? So I think I'll help to facilitate this in case things slow down, but I think it should be really interesting. So please have a listen.
Oh, I thought you're the moderator.
I'm the facilitator.
Oh, I see. Okay, fine. So, Brian, I have to put you on the spot then. So you do most of the time.
Do that.
So Brian and I also have known each other for a long time, and obviously now that he's with Xpeng, we have worked very closely together. Just this morning, we were having a conference call around some of the next steps with Xpeng. So Xpeng actually, just to give you a little bit of a backdrop, started out by He Xiaopeng. He was one of the founder of UC Web. The company started out in around 05, 06. It was sold to Alibaba in about 2013, 2014. And so, and he stayed on in Alibaba. But, while he had that first pot of gold, he started incubating Xiaopeng Qi Xpeng Motors in Guangzhou. He put together a small team. That was the first time I visited him, saw the Xpeng model, kind of a prototype. And I drove the prototype. Obviously, it's really a prototype. It's assembled together. And then when I saw this whole momentum around autonomous drive and more importantly, smart cars, I like to call it EV, but EV is kind of it's kind of just electric power vehicle. So the bigger thing behind Xpeng models is not just electric power vehicles; it's a smart vehicle. And so when I saw that trend coming to play, I started instigating him to leave his, comfort zone in Alibaba to jump ship into full time. I told him that if he does do that, we'll all stand behind him and back him with capital. GGV obviously will be one of them. So it took him a while. It took him about a year since I started talking to him in 2016, but early 2017, when his baby boy was born, that's when he made his decision. That's the time to do it. And he left Alibaba in August of 2017 to do this. And he managed to assemble a great group of talent around him because he had that halo. One of them being Brian, whom he has also been talking to for a long time. And Brian also left a very, very comfortable position to take that risk alongside with him. So with that, I want to get Brian to share a little bit about why did he leave his comfort zone, why does he want to do this? Right.
Thanks, Jixun, and thank you, Rebecca, for having me here. Actually, I was watching the previous slides. one thing actually is a flashback from the past, because the first deal I worked on when I arrived in Asia in 2004 was the takeover battle of Coffee Brewery. That was the deal that we would try to buy. Banking industry. So I was an M&A banker in New York, was a Wall Street firm for 6 years, and then I was JP Morgan for 14 years in Asia, in Hong Kong, and pretty much built the practice for China, for TMT, for healthcare, and for a number of, so I was at JP Morgan. Living in the cabins and eating barbecues, and that's how I met him. You know, I met him, I liked him as a person, and obviously that time he was just he just sold the Alibaba, sold the UC to Alibaba, and he's moving on to his obviously next career. So ever since talking about what his next big thing is, he invited me to come to the prototype dealing in Beijing. That was in 2016. They had the Xpeng Motors prototype. He wasn't a part of Xpeng Motors at that time. He was still an investor, but he invited me to watch the car, the prototype they did here. Very interesting. I mean, it was a very small company. I think at that time it's about 100 people. They're only doing R&D, trying to make a car from 0 to 1. But I think after Jixun convinced him, after he had decided to leave Alibaba and to join Xpeng full time, he actually came to my house in Hong Kong. And he said, Ryan, I mean, I've decided to leave Alibaba. I'm about to announce my retirement. I want to join Xpeng Motors full time. I thought about, I think I need someone to help me because it's a very resource intensive endeavor, right? I mean, making cars in like an internet business, you need a lot of resources, a lot of capital, a huge organization to make it work. So love to see whether you'd be interested. To be honest, that was the summer of 2017, and I thought, well, Xpeng Motors. I remember it was only 100 people, probably not haven't raised that much capital at the time. Very little.
You were supposed to help him.
Yeah, so okay, but he's a friend. He asked, I should, think of him. So I didn't want to say no. So I said, let me think about it. And then, but for the next 6 months, from the summer of 2017 till I would say January 2018, that 6 months actually I spent a lot of time with him and with his team. And also that time, very interesting is that all the EV makers or EV startups all came to JP Morgan, to me, to ask for help, right? So I met William Lee from NIO. In fact, I led the team to pitch for the IPO. Also, I met with Jia Yueting. Obviously, a lot of you know him as well. That time, very high-profile entrepreneur. Also, WM Motors, Byton, all these names. So I actually got interested. I said, wow, I mean, actually, I can see a convergence of resource and capital into this sector. Why is that? So it actually got me very interested to dig deeper. And I think, after a few months of talking to these players and really looking at the industry, it actually strikes me that it is actually an industry. If you look at all the industries, because I cover all the industries, right? It is actually one industry that has a huge volume, given auto is a big sector in terms of dollar amount, and also it's a sector that's destined to change, because you cannot. I mean, there's no other sector I would say that change is definitely going to happen, because whether it's EV, whether it's autonomous driving, it's just a matter of time that it's going to take over to disrupt the existing sort of mobility and the existing companies. So that got me very interested. At the same time, I think more importantly is actually the more I spend time with the team, with Xpeng and with Xpeng Motors team, I can see that they're trying to do something very different. Just like Jixun mentioned, they're not trying to do to make a gas engine car to become an electric car. Electrification, I would say, it's only the very, very first stage. They're trying to make a product that's smarter, more focused on user experience, try to be autonomous, and they will all do that in an integrated way. So I think that is a very different approach versus all the other companies I've met during that time. So I think it took me about 6 months and actually announced my sort of departure from JP Morgan early in 2018. Officially joined the company in March.
Right. So it's quite a change, quite an experience. Having first met Xiaopeng, getting to know what he wants to do, believing in his vision, and I suppose you have to also convince your family, your wife, that this is the right thing to do, and make that big move. And I know that after I worked with Brian quite a bit over the last year plus after he joined is you really get into this entrepreneurial 996 culture.
So that's a basic requirement.
And he lives in Hong Kong. I mean, his family is in Hong Kong, but he pretty much works in Guangzhou. That's where Xpeng Motor is, and he drives the Xpeng Motor cars every day to and fro from where he lives in a decent hotel, I would say, but it's a drive away. And I think to what Brian was saying earlier about smart car, about EV, I think China is a very big market. It's 26 million, 25 million new cars every year. This is and despite some of the slowing down in terms of new car sales, it's still a very, very big market. In the EV penetration, not to mention the smart car penetration, but the EV penetration is only about 3% plus minus. So there's still a lot of room for growth. But I really want to come to this question as what defines a smart car? Because I think when we think about a car today, it's still very utility. Our mindset is still very utility based of a car. You drive it from point A to point B. I think we haven't quite fundamentally changed the user experience in a car, which I think Xpeng is aspiring to do. And so, Brian, maybe you can talk a little bit about these experiences of what is a smart car and why is it different for Xpeng going forward?
Yeah, this is actually a very interesting question. I remember when we launched our G3 to the public, the first delivery was December last year. So at the launch party, actually Xiaopeng asked me, said, well, do you mind to talk to all your friends who are the key opinion leaders? Ask them the question, what do they think a smart car definition is? So I actually went around, I asked a lot of the investors, a lot of the, for example, Joe Tsai, Zhang Lei from Hill House. I asked them, because actually that means that this whole category is waiting to be defined. So at Xiaopeng, I think what we see a car to define as a smart car, I see this actually, there are 3 dimensions. First of all, I think the car has to have a very, I would say, a capability of learning about the driver, right? So if you're inside the car, you drive it every day. For example, I'm driving G3, our car, to work. You can use, I use my voice. I never touch any buttons. I actually use voice to command the car. So I want to listen to certain music. I want to go to certain, pick up a coffee. I want to go to work. They will route, automatically. After you use it a number of times, they actually start to know you. They can make logical recommendations. So that learning process, I think, is very interesting. That make a car, from a user behavior perspective, is very smart because we have an AI camera, actually can monitor you. We can do a Face ID, actually links to a payment. So actually, we actually connected with Mai and Shima credit. So all the things are connected. So that's one part, is like how to make the car evolve and learn about the driver. The second part of, I think, make it smart is actually, can the car become better on its own? For example, most of the cars you bought in the past, every time you want to have a major change, you have to buy the next model or the new model, right? But these days, I think a lot of the changes can be updated without changing the car, which is what we call over-the-air upgrades. How much of the car can be over-the-air upgraded? That's also, I would say, dimension of smartness. For example, a lot of the OEMs will tell you that the car is we can do OTA on our screen, so all the apps on the screen can be OTA, but just like refreshing your phone. But actually, what we try to achieve is the most, if not all, the electronic control units in the car that controls mobility, safety, everything can be upgraded with new features and new performance matrices. So that also is a part, I would say, defines how smart a car is. And then obviously the third part is autonomous driving, right? So we actually is one of the few, I would say, OEM company in China that has our own autonomous driving research unit. And we're proud to say is that we're probably the only OEM in China that has our own self-developed autonomous driving technology in the volume production car, which is the T3. So that is actually also because you collect a lot of data, you actually can make the car smarter because they can actually learn how to steer themselves. So I think those are the dimensions I would say defines a smart car.
Right. So I think if you think about how this market will evolve as the smart car penetration goes up, we are getting into a smarter living. So when GGV looks at this whole ecosystem, we are not just looking at just the the autonomous or EV company per se or the car company per se. We're looking at investing in the whole ecosystem in and around it. So for example, we invest in a company called Xcharge, which is building smart charging station. We invest in Drive AI, which is essentially an autonomous technology company. So this whole ecosystem that we are seeing today is gradually being built up. And there will be convergence. And some of these convergence will happen with the likes of Uber and Didi. There can be collaborations and co-opetitions and so on. So that's how I think the market is evolving going forward. I think
Jixun, for Xpeng Motors, I'll put my facilitator hat on here. Sorry to interrupt you, but I want to know, what do you think, you've watched this company grow, you were there from the start, you've seen Brian come on board. What do you think is the next major milestone for the company? You're the key lead, you were the earliest investor, so, and you've been involved with a lot of other startups. You know, some have really skyrocketed, some have kind of stayed there. What's the next milestone for Xpeng?
Well, I think for Xpeng, I think why I believing in Xiaopeng so much, when he comes on, he's really trying to build a product, and he really believe in what he's trying to do, and he want to build a great product. In fact, he had the license to sell the car earlier than most people, but he only decided to start selling them and delivering them late last year. So to me, that's a milestone. They just launched their next model just in the Shanghai Auto Show. I think it was last week. Yeah, and so that's a milestone. We think that right now they are in the production ramp to a few thousand units a month. We think that they will be able to deliver tens of thousands of units this year. That's a big milestone. And if we see the next model, I think it's called P7, that's going to be beyond G3. P7 is the next model that will be coming out next year. We just launched it, and so we'll be delivering it next year. That's a milestone because the car company is not just a single product company, and there will be multiple models targeting different class of consumer and different needs. So I think Xiaopeng is executing that on the spot. I think a big part of what he has been able to do is assembling this highly talented team, and that's tough. That's taking a lot of effort on his part, and getting a lot of investors behind him and believing in him. Building a car is no easy task. It's not just about the talent, it's also about the capital. It's not just tens of millions or hundreds of millions of dollars. It's billions of dollars to get that going. And so I think they have hit a couple of milestones and they're going to continue to hit them.
So yeah, I have a follow-up question to that. So when the Japanese cars came in, people were pretty skeptical about them, right?
And so what makes you think the Chinese car companies are going to do well, particularly in the EV space? Brian?
Well, I think that's a very interesting question, because if you look back, I mean, the Japanese took, I don't know, 20 plus years to build up their presence. I mean, mostly cracking the US market, right? Then the Korean came, actually equally took them 20 plus years to have a decent market share. I think that, to me, the two things. One is that building a brand, complete new brand in a foreign market is very challenging. What I would say is that for us, for example, to attempt to build a big brand in the US, that would probably be a very different, I would say, endeavor. However, I think that for us, I think we have some advantages going in our ways. One is that we're based in China. We try to produce a product. We try to develop a product that's completely focused on the Chinese market. I think the Chinese market is big enough. It is the largest EV market in the world. It is also the fastest growing EV market in the world. So it's actually, it's a very attractive market. At the same time, I think the market forces, I think, favors companies that has the capability to really listen to what consumer locally want and develop the technology and the product to suit that, I would say, desire. So I think that's one of the forces, I think, going our way. Secondly, I think in China, if you look at the consumer adoptance of technology, it's much faster than US or the rest of the world. Look at, whether it's smartphone penetration to reach 50%, China is like take half the time than US to reach that. If you look at, at payment, look at, share rides, all that, I think China moves much faster than US. So I think when auto coupled with technology, especially with consumer-facing technology and features, I would think Chinese companies, Chinese developers actually has advantage if you use the past as a reference. So that gave us also confidence that we can do a better job and develop a brand and product for the Chinese market. But it's a hugely competitive marketplace. So it's not an easy job to do that. But I think we have the confidence that if we are focused on the core target consumer group, which is the mass market, the tech savvy, the large city, the young crowd, which is the profile that we target, and provide them with a differentiated product and customized to their local liking, I think we have a chance.
Right. Okay. So you're going to concentrate on the China market for now, and then maybe go international later on?
Well, I think, if we can establish ourselves in China, then I think we definitely would look beyond China. I think obviously the technology we developed, like autonomous driving, also for some of the smart user features, although some of the language and user patterns will be different, but I think that technology coupled with our EV product could be suitable for some adjacent markets actually very close to Chinese consumption patterns.
Right. Jixun, from your perspective of Chinese companies going outside of their national borders, has that usually been a good thing or a...
Well, increasingly the Chinese are going out. There's a big movement of Chinese companies going out, and you've seen the Alibaba, Tencent, JD, different degree, ByteDance, and I think increasingly you are seeing companies not at that scale, not at that size going out, and I think that for Xpeng per se, I think they would need to establish their presence and foothold in China. That's definitely a first step. The one thing about the EV penetration or smart car penetration, which is largely electric power, is the whole charging station and infrastructure is very important. In the US, Tesla is essentially building up their own infrastructure. China today, as what Brian had told me, is that we have about 1 million charging stations today, and we are getting to 5 million potentially sometime next year. So that infrastructure build-up will facilitate penetration, and I think that will help Xpeng in getting their foothold. This is not a winners take all game, so it's still very much your challenge is yourself making a good product and a great product the consumer truly wants.
So you think there's room in the market for NIO, Tesla, and Xpeng, all three, and some others?
There's room in the market for many, right? Because the market is big enough. But having said that, different companies are actually competing for different target group of users. The way Xpeng is being priced is 200 to 300,000 RMB versus Tesla and NIO, which is priced at a much higher range. So obviously the competition, the competitive dynamics is quite different for different market segments.
Okay, Brian, it would be great if you could talk a little bit about what's happening with the R&D in Silicon Valley and the autonomous driving R&D, because I think that that's one differentiator for your company.
Yeah, well, I think for us, having a presence in the US, particularly in Silicon Valley, is important because that's where still I think the cutting edge of the technology and also attracting the right level of talent. I think it's critical to have that presence, to plant the flag there, I would say. We don't have a huge presence there, so we have only a few dozen people. I think other Chinese companies have hundreds, if not thousands, of employees in California. So we obviously try to limit our investment, but we think that's strategically important for us to have that, I would say, beachhead, to really having our sort of name out there and having the talent, to attract the talent. But our R&D effort, I think, for the autonomous driving particularly, we will have to combine both the US research capability, but also on the ground sort of capability to make it actually viable to be used in our car. So we actually have a couple hundred people team in Guangzhou, for example, focused on implementation testing. That's actually a big part of autonomous driving. And I think that's only can be done locally. And then the good thing about this is that we have our own car that can utilize our own technology. We don't have to outfit different brands' cars. So to us, the US presence is important, and we are doing it in a measured way. But I think we see a big future in autonomous driving, and that's the area we will invest pretty heavily.
Okay, that sounds great. How many people out here have piloted one of these cars? How many? Oh, one. There's one. Okay. Who else wants to? Who else wants to? Oh, okay. All right. Well, you have some fans out here in the audience, Brian.
So our car right now is already on the road. So it's a production car. It's being sold. We actually have sales stores in Beijing, Shanghai, and all the big cities. So if you're interested, actually, there are stores here that have our car. You can go for a test drive. One thing I want to say is that because I've seen a lot of the startups, right, in this space, it's very different to have a concept car, which in the showrooms or test drive, moving that towards a production car. Because for a concept car to reach production car, you have to go through massive amount of testing. A lot of features will not appear in production car because, for example, I don't know, all the screens in some of the cars can survive the road test. There's also the cost issues and etc. So we're obviously already a production car. It's being sold in masses, and hopefully we'll be delivering thousands of vehicles a month to the market. So for people who actually would like to enjoy a car right now, there's actually stores in Beijing that you can go visit and do a test drive.
And what are your sales goals for the year?
So we have orders that we will be. We have a backlog of orders that will deliver well into July. So that means that the first half of the year we'll probably do about 10,000 deliveries. And then our aim is try to reach 40,000 by the end of the year.
So you've been hiring an awful lot of new people. I mean, it must be a huge challenge managing all these new people coming on board, particularly in R&D. So could you talk about the challenge of that managerial issue?
I think it's not just R&D because this is the company has a very different culture. When I first arrived, it's interesting that we have, let's say, our employee profile. So 60% of them came from auto companies, and 30% came from technology companies like internet companies, and then 10% like me come from other companies, right? So You can imagine, actually, the auto culture and the technology culture is very different. So auto culture, the engineer will say, okay, let's agree, this is a design, this is a feature, we're frozen, so 6 months later we can produce, right? So they don't want any changes in that period, so everything has to be fixed. And the internet guys say, oh, why don't we make those changes? If it doesn't work, why try that? It'll drive them crazy. So it is actually a culture that really difficult to gel. But I think, we always try to, we made it work. So obviously we have a culture that's adhesive. We have departments that you never heard in the OEM before. Like we have a department called AI, department called Internet Products. We have obviously autonomous driving departments. So we actually have the people communicate, very, very, smoothly across these disciplines. So that's a big challenge. It takes quite some time to get them to accept each other's way of working and then research.
It's not easy. I mean, they went from like hundreds to thousands of employees today. So, and in relatively short period of time, just over about 1.5 to 2 years. And definitely a lot of integration challenges, and team needs to, get to know each other and work with each other. That's always tough. But I think there is a common goal, there's a common desire, and so they have actually worked through a lot of the differences over the last, year. I know there's a lot of, challenges in the process, but definitely they have worked it out quite a bit.
So yeah, I think the techies are really taking over the auto industry now. It used to be just automakers, right? Now it's gotten, you have to be a techie to be an automaker as well. So you've seen this huge cultural shift, and China is leading that. So I'd like to ask, do you think that China will be the Detroit of electric vehicles?
China will be, well, I think China will definitely be the biggest market for EV. And also I would say it will be a pioneer in terms of developing a smart electric vehicle, intelligent electric vehicle. Because I think, just like I said, Chinese consumer is more adaptive to new technology. They're more accepting. And I think China has a huge manufacturer base. I mean, look at the capacity of Chinese automakers. There's actually a lot of capacity left in China to pump out a lot of cars. So I would not be surprised China become the engine of growth for EV and also for smart EVs.
So I read that NIO has given up on building its own plant, but Xpeng is going ahead with your own plant?
Well, we have a dual strategy right now. So the first car we are manufacturing with a contract manufacturing partner in Zhengzhou. I think that's a brilliant strategy because for a young company with very little capital, this is actually a strategy to get you time to market and also flexibility of production. But at the same time that we are building our own plant in Zhaoqing, which is on the outskirts of Guangzhou, that will be completed by the end of this year in time to produce our next model, the P7. Okay. And that actually also is a very, I would say, important for us is having something that you can control. So balance the demand and flexibility in those strategies is important.
Right. So Tesla will be opening its own production plant in Shanghai in a few years. So what do you think about Tesla and Elon Musk? Are they a competitor to you, or how do you regard them?
You don't have to redirect. Well, I think, like I said, they are a formidable force. I mean, Tesla have definitely been around and they've been quite successful in their own right. But they are playing at a different market in a sense because they are priced differently. Today, before Model 3 is probably going to be 300,000 and above, 300 to 400,000. Their other models are actually a lot more expensive. Right. Whereas Xpeng models is actually targeting at the sort of the mid to low end range. Okay. So a different target audience, different target users. Right. So I think they are playing in a different game now. As there overlap and convergence and competition, yes, I think there is some level of that. So, and like I said, I think this is not Didi versus Uber. It's not a winners take all market. There will be contenders and there will be multiple players.
I actually like to add that having competition from a good, high quality manufacturer actually helps the market expansion. If you look at smartphone, I mean, the early phases of smartphone, there's a lot of brands. Actually, there's a lot of competition, a lot of new entrants. Actually, that helps the growth, the market, size increases. So I think it is a good thing to have Tesla to make a splash in China and to really educate the consumer market on the right the smart EV models. Second thing I want to also say is that having Tesla bring their manufacturing base here also brings a large group of good suppliers to China. A lot of those are not currently available in China. So for us, we have a lot more to choose from. That's also good.
All right, that does sound good. Are there questions from the audience? Okay. Here you go, and if you would identify yourself, please.
Hey, my name is Lu Zhang. I'm from Moss Adams, CPA firm from California. So I just want to comment on Tesla. It also helps you to train talents, right? To help you to continue to generate your workforce development for you guys. And also, I'm curious for Brian. I'm curious about your interaction with your car right now. You're saying that your car is learning about you, right? So are you afraid of being too predictable to your car?
Well, I think the car is currently obviously not that smart yet, right? If it can predict what I think, then obviously that's a different level of AI. Currently, I think the car is smart enough that you can have a conversation. For example, if I drive myself, I can ask the car to tell me, okay, what's the weather? If I go to what's the destination, whether there's a traffic in the way. So that is predictable. Given more interaction, when I get into the car actually will make a recommendation of route, because every day I go to my service department to work, it's a fixed route. And they will actually say, okay, they recognize that's the same time you're driving, that route is congested, they will make recommendations of alternative route. So those are things. Well, I think if you look at competition, right? There are different categories. There are competition from OEM. I mean, there's foreign OEM. The names like Volkswagen, Mercedes, Daimler, Benz, etc., or GM. I mean, those are all competitors to us. There are domestic OEM players like Geely, like Shanghai Auto. They're also trying very hard, try to develop EV and smart EV. I see them in a different category because I think they have their advantages. Their advantages, they are automotive companies. They're good at manufacturing. They're good at having a good cost discipline to make an electrification of a vehicle. But I think for them, having the internet or from AI's way of thinking about product, it will take a while because just like the culture I mentioned, even within our own company, the auto guys cannot talk to the internet guys that smoothly. Imagine inside an auto company's department wall. I mean, how frequent that communication can happen. Right. So I think there's a culture change that actually. So I gave you some of the names, but I don't want to predict.
Well, I think we talked about some of them already tonight. Yeah, well, NIO. Well, they've raised a lot of money.
We don't know. I mean, at the end of the day, we don't have enough data points. Yes, I think you are right about NIO sales and their deliveries and all that. But there could be more capital to back them, to fix things, to turn things around. I don't know. I mean, it's hard for us to predict that. Tesla actually went through a pretty tough time themselves.
Sure.
Without Elon Musk putting in his own money behind it. So it's hard to say what's going to happen. But they are certainly a force to contend with because they are already public and they have strong backers like Tencent and so on.
Yeah, so I mean, here's a comparable to the Xpeng put in his own money into this electric car maker, right? Of course, from his huge sale to Alibaba, right?
Right. Well, that's the thing. I actually think that building a car company is super difficult. This is not just another app. This is not just another, food takeout ride sharing services. This is not. It requires tremendous amount of capital, and so I believe that you have to be a serial entrepreneur. You have to have done it before. You have to have that halo, because only then will the talent believe in you, want to follow you, and capital want to follow you, because you put in your own money where your mouth is. Otherwise, this is tough. So this is a very tough game to play. I mean, I think the automakers have a strong, financials, infrastructure, everything, the traditional players. But what they lack is the whole internet mindset. The new guys, though, is they don't necessarily have all the talent and the capital working hand in hand yet. And that's the tough part. If they can make that work, I think there'll be a few to stay.
The car is really about mobility and connectedness today. It's not a car anymore. It's just a carrier, like any device, and all your connections are in there. So anyhow, we do have to wrap up. Okay, if it's a really short question. Yeah, I've met him too, and he is an impressive guy. He's very humble. To me, he seemed very humble and kind of laid back in a way. Maybe he's not laid back at all in the workplace, but he seemed kind of laid back to me.
I mean, he's both laid back and very serious as well. I mean,
Oh,
he is
I
a very
didn't say-
detail-oriented. I mean,
Yeah.
if you trace his background, he is a IT guy. He writes his own programs, and he actually also a very good product manager. He really focused on refining the product and try to make it perfect. I mean, it does remind me of a number of the very famous internet entrepreneurs like Tony Ma. He's like that, right? And he's at the same time, I think also what I think struck me about him is that he's someone who has seen it all from 0 to 1, right? He's built a company from 2 people, just 2, he and his partner, to a 4,000 employee at that time, and sold it to Alibaba. So he's seen 0 to 1. He's made money. So actually, he's not someone. I think a lot of people who actually just starting off with the first enterprise, and you'll not be able to hope against a large amount of capital. I mean, it's just like it's a confidence issue. But he's seen a large amount of money before. He's also seen a large organization. After he sold the business, he did not take the money and enjoy the money. He actually joined Alibaba to run a much bigger organization. He ran the mobile group, which is almost 10,000 people. So for an EV company, an auto company, you actually need someone who actually can hold a large organization, because it's unlike an internet company. It's a couple thousand max, but it's a 10,000 or larger company. So I think all these ingredients are important.
I just want to add one thing, is that having known Xpeng for 10 over years, he has a big heart. There are not many entrepreneurs. I mean, UC Web was founded with him and Liang Jie, Jack Liang, and they brought on Yong Fu as the CEO who led the company afterwards. There are not many entrepreneurs who are able to do that, to start a company and then get somebody else to lead the company, taking the company to a new level, and eventually was sold to Alibaba. So he has a heart for at the right place for the talent, and that allows him to get people to follow him. So that's all I'll add.
That's great. Thank you so much. That was really interesting, very fascinating. Thank you for being here. Let's give him a round of applause.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. All right. Thanks so much. I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Brian. Okay, we're going to segue right into our VC Dealmaker panel, and they're all here. I know I saw William Balbine hanging out over here. So I'd like to welcome our VC Dealmakers to start coming up here, and I'm going to introduce them. So it's always our evening, if that wasn't already. But I'd like to welcome David Yuan, who's the partner with Redpoint Ventures and head of Redpoint China. David's going to be coming up here, and we certainly know that David put an extra effort to get here tonight. David, is this stool going to be okay for you? It's okay? All right. And then I'd like to welcome. Well, let me tell you a little bit more about David first. I've known David for quite some time, actually even before Redpoint China, when he was at Redpoint in Silicon Valley. But he's really been on a winning streak lately with a number of companies that have gone public. And so he invests in mobile apps and platforms and many other sectors. Okay, I guess everyone wants to network. Okay, William Balbine, general partner at SOSV, venture capital fund with 550 million assets under management, known as the Accelerator VC. At SOSV, he's managing director of China Accelerator. And all right, and he's also set up MOX, which is the mobile-only accelerator. And so, William, thank you for being here. Okay, Yuan Liu, I saw you over there from Zenfund, managing director at Zenfund. He has been with Zenfund for about 5 years now. And I realize you must be from Baltimore because you have a lot of Baltimore in your background. He has a number of really interesting companies in his portfolio, including Castbox, the podcasting company. Okay, finally, Henry Yuan, a partner at Cooley.